Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the GW Basketball Insiders podcast. I am Liam Omerku alongside David Korn. And we haven't had a show in a little while, but we decided it was right as we're kind of getting into conference play. Conference play starts next week. We decided that it was New Year's Eve. Yeah, exactly. It was as good a time as any to do another show. So we kind of did a bit of a mailbag today, which got us a few questions. So should we start off with the first question?
Let's hit it, Liam. So the first question, I think the big news in the college basketball world right now is about Jim Larranaga's sort of surprise mid-year retirement after a tough start with the Hurricanes. He announced his immediate retirement. And of course, that from a GW perspective, any GW fan's first thought went to Chris Caputo, who was Larranaga's right-hand man for over 20 years at both George Mason and Miami. And fuel to the fire was added when Jeff Goodman, I just want to read the exact tweet that Goodman had, and then Goodman's quote tweet in response. Sorry, I should have had that ready. That was bad. Bad podcasting. But Larranaga said, one name that should be in the mix to replace Jim Larranaga is George Washington head coach Chris Caputo, as long as AD Dan Radakovich isn't able to lure a big name to Miami. Caputo, 44, was an assistant at both George Mason and Miami. GW is 11-2 this season. And then, after getting brutally ratioed on that, Goodman quote tweeted his original tweet and said, "And I am not saying Chris Caputo is going to get the job, but I am saying he has a strong connection and he could be in the equation if it falls down far enough." So that was the big news of the day, and we got a mailbag question from Brendan Fusco asking if Goodman was right and Miami did end up getting Caputo, who would be at the top of GW's list to replace him.
Of course, everyone took that opportunity to just tell us how bad GW is and all that different stuff. Great. Appreciate that. The people who have, watched one game this year are able to give a perfect summation of GW basketball this year. That's exactly who we're looking for when we try to evaluate GW basketball. But
yes.
Anyway, my number one name is, I have two names that are kind of stick out to me. First one was actually in the mix a few years ago when Caputo got the job, was James Jones, who's the coach at Yale.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just don't think it's too difficult of a transition. Like, yeah, obviously Yale's a better academic school than GW. It's a little bit of a different situation going from the Ivy League to the Atlantic 10, but James Jones has consistently done a pretty good job at Yale. And GW is a higher academic, certainly than some other teams in their league. So that was the one that I had. And then the other one that is sort of in a similar vein, but it's actually a D3 coach currently who has killed at Swarthmore, is Landry Kozmowski. So I think I want someone with head coaching experience if we're, suspending reality here and imagining that GW is searching for a new coach in the spring. And Landry Kozmowski, great, I guess, mid-Atlantic connections, especially Philly connections. I'm, a little bit partial. Obviously, I'm from Philadelphia. Those are my two. There's a few others that I could throw out. I think the Columbia coach would be decent. He was at NJIT before, Jim Engels. And then there's a few reaches, Bob Ritchie at Furman. I think he might get there's a chance he gets the Miami job, to be honest. And then Mitch Henderson at Princeton, really good coach. Those are just a few names that I had, but really, I think Landry Kozmowski and James Jones are 1A and 1B for me. I'm sure there's other names that I'm forgetting. And if this was a real kind of search, I'm sure that our perspective would be a little different. But my main thing is I don't want a first-time head coach.
Yeah. The way my first thought went to Ben McCollum over at Drake, who has Drake at,
and there's no way Ben McCollum would leave Drake for GW.
Okay,
GW had to offer him 3 times as much money.
Here's how I am thinking about it, right? I'm thinking about it sort of like Josh Schertz last year, where he went from Indiana State, again, same league, to St. Louis, same league. And that was after a few years. If GW is willing to go in there and offer him a a lot of money. Again, this is all a hypothetical exercise, by the way. All indications are that 1, Miami is not interested in Caputo, and 2, Caputo is not interested in Miami. So this is purely a thought exercise. And to add more context to the Goodman tweet, I know for a fact that Chris Caputo and Jeff Goodman are on a texting relationship. So if anyone is wondering about that.
And that's kind of a lot of the conclusion that a lot of people had, which was clearly you just got a text from Chris Caputo's agent or something like that.
Which I don't think is necessarily the case. Because again,
from Chris Caputo himself.
I don't think Caputo is interested. I have him on the record saying that he would not be interested in a potential Miami head coach opening, and that he's very happy in DC. But I think this may have been Goodman preemptively looking out for one of the most well-liked people in college basketball in Chris Caputo. And I encourage everyone to listen back to the recording of Curry Hickstage's search season from yesterday. I got the chance to speak for a bit there. I brought up Tony Skinn as a potential name for the Miami job, which Curry seemed to be receptive to.
You blew up our spot. You told me yesterday. Dave and I were on the phone yesterday, and he was like, I've got a great take. I'm saving it for the podcast. Tony Skinn. It's going to be awesome. I don't think anyone else has said it. And then he gets on the Twitter space last night, and suddenly we don't have our wonderful.
I like to think that the search season exists in a world in which the takes are not aggregated, where it's just sort of for the people there. So if you heard it there, great. If you're hearing it now, that's great too. But I do think it's off topic from this Brendan Fusco question, which was a great question, which we appreciate, which is leading to this great discussion. If Larranaga has a say in who the next head coach at Miami will be, which I'm not sure he will be, and Curry does a great job of going into who's actually making the decision. But if Larranaga does have a say, and Mason has a really good year, top 4 finish, makes an NIT, something like that, he might want his former player at Mason, Tony Skinn, not necessarily his former assistant coach, his former player, Tony Skinn, to get a look at the Miami job. But anyway, my first choice would be Ben McCollum. Again, I know a lot of the college basketball sickos have been hearing about him for the last few years, and now that he's finally gotten his D1 shot, he is killing it. And I think if GW is the first school above a caliber of Drake to go calling for,
I don't know if GW is above the caliber of Drake.
Money-wise, yes, they are.
Yeah, sure, but Drake's about to make the tournament for the second year.
Okay, but it's money.
I guess so. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Where was Ben McCollum before? He was Northwest Missouri State.
Yes, and then I have 2 assistant coaches who I would like to see, and these are 2 former GW assistants who are now assistants at higher caliber jobs. That may rub some feathers, I'll explain, but Brendan Strawn, who's now an assistant for Trey Autry's father at Syracuse. He did a great job here. He is maybe the most well-connected man in the DC area when it comes to assistant coaches in college basketball, other than the guy at Georgetown. I forget his name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh.
The assistant who was at Rhode Island, who's now at Georgetown?
Yeah,
him.
I forget his name, but yeah.
Brendan Strawn. These are both team takeover guys, but Brendan Strawn, he killed it at GW. Again, got that promotion to Syracuse. I think he would get some significant looks. I haven't seen his name floated around in any head coaching opportunities, but I would love to give him a shot. And then Zach Bovair. I think he has shown that at least X's and O's wise and recruiting wise.
Scouting. He is like maybe the best scouter on the entire East Coast. When he's working on the East Coast now.
So I think maybe some of Bovair's, from my understanding of his coaching acumen, maybe some of his interpersonal skills could use some work. But again, people love him. People respect him. People love him.
Yeah, but if he's put around the right staff, I really think
that's what I mean. I think Bovair would be a guy who maybe will need a specific type of staff around him, and you can build it. And then I wanted to throw out a name, and maybe this isn't more for a head coach. Maybe this is more for the elusive GM role that we're seeing sort of these celebrities take. But Mike Bray, the former Notre Dame head coach, it was reported after his exit in 2023 by John Feinstein that he was considering the GW job when it was open. He, again, didn't really pursue it. I think if he did, he would have gotten the job. No offense to Chris Caputo, but it's tough to say no to Mike Bray, an alumni who would want to go back, who had that sort of pedigree. But if he wants to come back into college basketball, I'm sure GW would love to have him either as a head coach or, again, in that sort of GM role. But that's another name I'd like to throw out there that I think once that can of worms was opened, whenever you mention a potential GW head coaching opening, you have to mention that name now.
I do think he would be better. Well, maybe he wouldn't be better in a GM role. I'm just kind of hesitant. It feels like it kind of fizzled out at Notre Dame for Mike Bray. And I don't want to be the team. I don't want to be the school that tries to bring him back into it.
But he's not really into it.
Yeah, he's just not really into it.
Well, yeah, because you've seen what's happening. We're all seeing what's happening at Green Bay with Doug Gottlieb, who's I get he's trying, but he also hosts a 3-hour radio show every day. Yeah. And I work in radio where I produce these 3-hour live radio shows every day, and it takes a lot of work to host one, especially host one on his own like he does. And so I know for a fact that he cannot devote as much time as necessary to being a successful Division I basketball head coach. So, no, it's a disaster.
Yeah. The other thing is he didn't really have any head coaching experience before this Green Bay job.
I believe his only coaching experience was serving on Bruce Pearl's staff for the Maccabi games for the USA team there, which is the Jewish Olympics, which, again, I'm Jewish. I can say this. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. That is not the pinnacle of sport. So
I have my Hanukkah pants on right now.
Hell yeah, Liam. Ally. I love it.
Exactly. The whole Doug Gottlieb thing is a disaster. My favorite thing was after they lost to Michigan Tech, who's actually apparently a pretty good D2 team. His radio show was called The Doug Gottlieb Show, and he then had he had someone not named Doug Gottlieb hosting the show. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to name the show after yourself, you kind of have to show up and keep,
Liam,
hosting the show.
Trivia time. Who had the first interview with Chris Caputo after he was hired after it was reported that he was the new GW head coach?
Was it Doug Gottlieb?
It was Doug Gottlieb. One and only time I've listened to a full episode of the Doug Gottlieb show.
Actually, yes, I remember that. I also listened and I was like, I got to the end and I was like, Caputo seems great, but this Doug Gottlieb's guy just seems like Frank. Like, oh my God, I don't want to listen to this guy again. So, how about we continue to suspend reality here and kind of build off that question? If Caputo were to go to Miami would need to buy him out. So what do we think Caputo's buyout is? Because he's got 2 years left, maybe. I mean, it's not.
Point of inquiry for does the team, if he elects to leave on his own, wouldn't he void that?
In theory, but he still has a contract with the university, and the university can say, "Yeah, maybe you're right."
Because again, we don't know
if he was going to Miami, then.
We don't know the details of his contract because GW is a private university, so they cannot be FOIA'd. So fun reporters like us cannot use the Freedom of Information Act to request the public records surrounding his contract. So they are under no obligation, and they should not make the details public. So I'm not sure exactly how the buyout clause would work surrounding this, but if you're Miami and this is your guy, I don't really think that's an issue for them dealing with GW buyout.
Not at all. I mean, they're probably going to be spending more on whoever they end up hiring. They're probably going to be paying him well more than what the buyout is.
Yeah, Will Wade's probably going to get a lot more then.
Yeah, it should be Will Wade. It should be Will Wade. So
it'll probably be Will Wade. But again,
unless there's another opening that's more palatable.
This is what Curry Hicks Sage said yesterday. I'm going to summarize it. If GW wins the league, there might be a conversation had.
Yeah.
But I do not believe Caputo has done enough right now to warrant consideration for the Miami job. And perhaps more importantly, my understanding of the situation is that Caputo himself is happy here. Again, I know everyone's like, oh, the family, but that doesn't really matter. But I do think that does matter here because I think it is important to note that his wife has a very successful career based in Washington, D.C. I don't know if anyone saw, but they were at the Biden's holiday party this year. And I guarantee you that was not because Caputo is the head coach down the street. So,
Yeah. Yeah. To answer my own question, my guess is $2 to $3 million.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, we got off track there.
Yeah. But I mean, there's really no way to know. And I think you're kind of right. But if you're GW and he's going to be poached away from you, then you should get Miami to pay you. Like, you shouldn't just like let him walk off. Like,
do you know what you do?
What's that?
You get them to come to the Smith Center for a
that's
game.
What BCU builds that into all
exactly. Exactly. That's what you do. You get a Chris Caputo-led Miami team to come to the Smith Center to face Zach Bovair, head coach of the GW Revolutionaries in 2025 for a matchup of the century.
Yeah. Well, you know what you do? You get them to come to play a David Korn-led GW team. I mean, if Doug Gottlieb can do it, I think you can do it.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Yeah. So
that's yeah. Well. I don't know if I would do any worse than Gottlieb. I think I could. I think a broken clock is right twice a day. I could find my way to 2 wins in a non-con.
Yeah. The only reason that they're even they're not winless is that Roy guy. What's his name? The Anthony Roy or something. He was hurt for the D2 game they played, but he's a bucket. He's so good. He's averaging like 23 points a game or something. And I would be remiss not to mention one more thing about Jim Larranaga here. For what it's worth, I was expecting him to retire at the end of the year, not during the year.
Oh, yeah.
But it got bad pretty quickly there. So this is what when Chris Caputo was interviewed about, I think this was around the time that Miami went to the Final Four, just a year after Caputo.
Yeah, this quote really threw people for a tizzy.
Oh my goodness. George Mason fans still have their panties in a twist about this. And my favorite part about this quote is that it is 100% accurate. There's no lies at all. It's just the truth. And he basically was, he did it to compliment Coach Larranaga, but a lot of the people at George Mason took offense to it because they didn't like hearing the truth. So
I know a certain person took a lot of offense to it.
There were a lot of people that took offense. I don't know. I'm sure you're referring to someone.
A certain person gets appreciates an odd Twitter fight sometimes.
I think, yeah, I know who you're talking about. So this is what Caputo said. He said, George Mason's a former commuter school, was D2, had 7 straight losing seasons when he got there, and hasn't sniffed the NCAAs since he left. And all these Mason fans were like, how could you say that? Like, he spent all this time at Mason. It's like, well, it's the truth. And sorry, if you can't handle the truth, then maybe play better. But I feel like I'm kind of inviting trouble by doing that because Mason might be better than GW this year. So we move on to Matt Moderno's question?
Yeah, but thank you, Brendan, for the question.
Yeah, no, that was a marvelous question. I think Brendan's in Costa Rica right now, so we have a GW basketball fan watching from Costa Rica. I did it from Spain a few years ago. So, pura vida. That's what I have to say. Exactly. So Matt Moderno, shout out Matt Moderno. Believe in DMV, believe hoops, all that fun stuff. This will be broadcast on his Twitter account and other places. His question was, if you could add one role player from another A10 team to this GW team, who would it be and why? You gave me an answer earlier this morning, so why don't you start?
Yeah, I went with Woody Newton. So by role player, I went with someone who plays around 20 minutes a game. This was my thinking. Plays around 20 minutes a game, below 10 point per game scorer. That's what I thought of as role player. So yeah. I think the guy you're going for may not qualify for my thing, but that doesn't actually mean he's not a role player. But yeah. I went down just a few miles away to George Mason for Woody Newton, the 6'9", quote, guard. Great shooter. Because, again, GW needs length this year at the wing, and GW needs shooting. And Woody Newton this year, again, not great percentages, but he's taking about 3.5 attempts per game and shooting 31%. Again, at his height, 6'9", 6'8", that's good enough for me. I think he would be a great first option off the bench to give Gerald Drumgoole some, rest and give GW a more traditional wing on the bench and not have to have Trey Autry play up or Dion Nesser Buchanan play down. And so that's who I would take as a role player from an A10 school. I would take Woody Newton to give some more depth at the wing and some more shooting.
Yeah. The first one I came up with was Sheldon Edwards Jr., but I think you're right. He's not so much of a role player. The way I looked at it,
Sheldon Edwards is confusing because it's when Loyal's healthy, I think he is a role player,
Yeah.
but right now he's not playing a role player role.
Yeah, how about them doing the ye old Diamond Head Classic special? 0-3. Did they have
Bernadette can't keep letting our teams go.
Well, they're switching it to Thanksgiving, aren't they? So it's no longer going to be a Christmas thing, right?
Still, there's something the A10. UMass didn't do well in it either, right?
Yeah. I think Rhode Island did it a few years ago and it didn't go well. Anyway.
I mean, GW won it. There's now this elusive video of Mike Lonergan dancing in a hula skirt and a coconut bra, but
Mike Lonergan was active on Twitter the other day, and it got.
I don't think we should even bother.
No, we're not going to. But if you want to read opinions that have been the same for the last 10 years, go on the GW Hoops message board. Everyone who has thoughts about it is sharing the same thoughts they've shared a lot of times, and fair play. It's just I don't know a lot about the situation. I mean, I do now, but I'm not going to speak on the situation because it's not.
We have no sourcing. We have no. Again, this is before our time, so we only have an outsider's perspective on this.
It's a crazy that Deadspin story. If you're watching this and you have not read that Deadspin story, you need to. It is a lot. It's a roller coaster. So anyway, my final answer on role players is Ramad Dean from Fordham. So there you go.
42. The only reason I didn't go with him, I love Ramad Dean. I like his game. Him and Elijah Gray, I thought were great off the bench for Fordham these past few years. But I don't think GW necessarily needs a big, especially with and we're going to get on this more later as well in one of our other mailbag questions. But with the emergence of Dion Nessa, I think again, GW has 4 very solid bigs. With
the way I look at it, you just need shooting. You need someone who can shoot. You know who would be great? You know who would be great pickup? Garrett Johnson. Yeah. So he's obviously not a role player, but
I've heard if anyone's listened to any press conferences, I've heard GW is missing him this year.
Yeah, I don't know. This is who would have thought? It is such a shame. I really wish he was.
Yeah,
so much better if he was playing. Okay, conference record predictions. There was a little thread about this on the message board too. So I got to do some research, think what other people get an idea of what other people are thinking. My answer is I kind of went through game by game a little bit and worked it out. I think they go 8-10 or 9-9, but I'll go with 8-10 is my final answer. David thinks we're going to go 15-1.
No, I don't think that. I think probably 10-8. 10-8, 11-7. I think that there'll be some really good opportunities to pick up some wins. I think the A10 is going to be a mess this year, and I think there is a real chance that the league cannibalizes itself and sort of prevents itself from becoming a true multi-bid league, which would be a real shame.
Yeah, no, I also think
and that I think there's a world that, I think the worst case scenario would be that after Dayton, all the other teams just sort of finish, Dayton could finish 17-1 or something. And then everyone else finishes around 12-6 to 8-8 or 12.
I think there's enough talent that Dayton won't finish they won't be that good. They're not going to completely.
I don't know. I don't see a team that's anywhere close to them right now. I kind of thought that was Loyola, but again, they're so hurt and without their point guard. I don't know about that. VCU has no bigs.
No love for Christian Furman?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I don't think Christian Furman would get 10 minutes on GW. Like,
Yeah, I guess so.
here, this is going to be really bad, but I need to go grab my computer charger.
I'm gonna pause it. I'll pause.
Yeah. And with the magic of StreamYard, we are back. But yeah, VCU's bigs have me really worried. Again, I don't think that will happen, but again, I still see GW as like the sort of the top-ish half of the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Like, I have them above Mason. I think they're a better team. Yeah. I was expecting Katie Johnson to have a much bigger role for them. And now that he hasn't, I think their ceiling's a lot lower. I think they're better than Davidson, who's really missing that point guard, that true point guard. I think they are a lot closer to teams like St. Bonaventure and Rhode Island than they are to teams like LaSalle. And so I sort of really see them in that 6, 7, 8 range. And I think that's very achievable.
Their only Q1 games this year, at least as of now, are against what schools do you think they're against? They're both away games.
GW?
Yeah. Only 2 Q1 games as of right now.
Would it be St. Bonaventure and Rhode Island?
Yep.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And those are both pretty fringe Q1 games. But if GW, so right now they've got I think a 9-0 record in Q4 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're 1-2 in Q3.
Yeah, 9-0 in Q4, 1-2 in Q3. Which
I think our 1 Q3 is the Illinois State win.
Yeah, I think so. So they have 7 Q4 games in conference play. If they win those 7 Q4 games, which probably is not going to happen, as we saw last year. If they win every remaining Q4 game and 1 Q3 game, you beat LaSalle once out of the 2 times that you play them. Then they are 8-10. If they can go and beat Mason once out of the 2 times they play them,
which we almost always do,
they are 9-9. If they can, let's see, and then they have these this is the good year, the good kind of schedule year for GW in terms of, this is the easier schedule year because you get St. Joe's at home, Loyola at home, VCU at home, and St. Louis at home. Although St. Louis isn't very good.
Yeah, that SLU game is winnable. I know going.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people chalk that up as a loss. That I think is now GW's favored.
Yeah, Ken Pom says they'll win 80-75, which 5-point favorites is they're better favored in that game than they are against UMass on the road.
Yeah. So again, I think they will be okay in the conference schedule. Again, I don't think they'll necessarily compete for a double bye, but
do you think they can win it? Do you think they can win an A10 tournament game? Because they could go 0-18, and it's that's all that matters. Is they win? They haven't won a tournament game. Let's see.
Chris Caputo hasn't won one.
Tournament game was the COVID year.
Chris Caputo hasn't won one.
What's that?
Chris Caputo has not won an A10 tournament game.
Yeah. Then the last year that GW won more than one conference tournament game. Do you know what it is?
Was it the NIT year?
No, it was 2007.
Ugh.
I think they got a double bye that NIT year, or maybe I think they won one game.
That year, no, actually, I knew that. I think they won once, or they lost their first game, and that's what knocked them out of the NCAA tournament bubble.
Yeah. And even the year 2014, the last year they made the tournament, they did not win more than one conference tournament game. So there you go.
Awesome. That's the bigger question, but we'll go. I'm going 10-8. 10-8.
10-8. Okay. Another question from Matthew Brooks here. Favorite pep band song? I have to go with "Are You Ready for It?" I love that they added that last year. He said it can be something that the Foghorns perform or something else.
They do Shake It Off sometimes, right?
Yeah, that's another good one.
I like when they do Shake It Off. I think that one's fun. But my favorite Smith Center song I heard this year was when they did a remix of the Drake and Josh theme song at an hour before the game. I think DJ Dior spun that up. That killed me. I was like, This is so funny.
Let's see. I think the last question we have that we got from someone else, and we'll kind of get into the other question that I have here is, what does the rotation look like in conference play, and what sort of role will Ty Bevins or Diane Nessa play, if any?
I think Diane Nessa has played himself into the rotation.
Yeah.
A big game now that he's finally healthy, not injured and not sick. Let me pull up his stats here, but he had a big game against
was the D2? It was against UVA Wise.
UVA Wise, and then he had another big game against.
He was good against Lafayette, wasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, he had a good game against Lafayette too. And
I mean, I think the real thing will be, okay, how does he do against, to a lesser extent Richmond, which is their first game, but more so Rhode Island and Dayton. If he goes out there and looks like he's, he doesn't look overwhelmed or anything, then I think that's when you start, I like him in this like relief role of Darren.
Yeah, so I was about to say that his role is inherently limited because I don't think he's shared the court really with Buchanan yet. Again, I didn't really watch the UVA Wise game, but
I didn't watch the game at all. As far as I'm concerned, those games don't count.
But against Lafayette, he pretty much was just in when Buchanan was out.
Yeah.
And Buchanan's a guy who, if he had it his way, he would play 40 minutes. And so I think he will average around 6 to 10 minutes per game, depending on the role. If he gets into foul trouble, maybe he'll have a few more minutes a certain game, whatever. But I think his role is capped, but I think his role is there. Whereas I think we will see games where Ty Bevins does not get any run whatsoever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So to answer that part of Cameron's question, I think Nessa has earned a small but important role, but I wouldn't expect him to get more than 10 minutes per game most nights. Bevins, I think there will be some days he plays, but I don't think he will be a part of the regular rotation.
Yeah, and he's just a freshman. I don't think the expectation was necessarily that he was gonna. This wasn't going to be like JaCoy Hutchinson last year, or Yeah, I think one of them solidifies a role. I think it's going to be Nessa, which is basically what you said. The one thing you mentioned, the foul trouble, the team as a whole, and especially Darren Buchanan, are pretty good at not drawing or not committing fouls. They're good at drawing them, not committing them. But also just the way that Darren Buchanan plays, there's a referee crew who doesn't call it like other referee crews or, whatever. Just he's such a physical player, and he gets into so many spots where he could be called for an offense, especially offensive fouls. But I do think that that's something that would increase Diane Nessa's role if Darren Buchanan got into some foul trouble.
Yeah, but just looking at overall rotations to round this out, I don't think this is breaking news or groundbreaking from anyone, but starting lineup is going to be the starting lineup. I don't think that will change. I think in most situations, we will see a bench unit of Christian Jones, Trey Autry, Diane Nessa, and Sean Hansen. I think Autry will most likely be the first guy off the bench. I think Hansen has been improving a lot lately, especially on the defensive end, and has sort of played his way. I guess Caputo showed faith in him, and I think that kind of worked. And because again, Hansen really did struggle on the defensive end to start the year, but he has looked a lot better, especially stuffing the stat sheet on that end with some steals and blocks against Lafayette. But he's again a solid backup big.
He's still going to shoot more. I still want him to shoot more 3-pointers.
I agree, but I think what's kind of nice is that GW has very defined roles right now, which I think is good for a basketball team. And I think it's good that, JaCoy Hutchinson knows he's the starting point guard. I think it's good that Gerald Drumgoole Jr. knows that he is the starting 3 and that he's going to play a lot of minutes and he's going to be expected to take a lot of shots. That is, I think, good for him that he knows what his role is. Buchanan knows that he is the focal point of the offense, and he will have the ball in his hands a lot. Whether that means taking on more of a playmaker role or scoring, depending on the matchup, he knows. Castro knows he'll be a lob threat. Moss knows that he's kind of there to score when he can. So again, these are all very defined roles, and I think that's something that is an underrated aspect going into this and could be very helpful for GW. And this is something we saw in Caputo's first year, where we had more defined roles out of necessity when we had like that 6-7 man rotation. Bishop, Brendan Adams, Max Edwards, Hunter Dean, and Ricky Lindo, when it was basically just those five with maybe a hint of Noel Brown or a hint of Quincy Samuels here or there. But basically, you knew it was those five getting 30 minutes plus everyone. And I think that was a big asset to that team. And I think, again, this year it's more because just the roles are more defined, and that role definition with depth is going to be a huge key for this team.
Yeah, it's more of a luxury than a necessity. Yes. I mean, 3-point shooting, defensive rebounding, and making sure that you get Darren Buchanan the ball in creative ways. Those are the things that I guess there's the most room for improvement. And obviously they need to continue. If they can keep getting to the foul line like they have, there's going to be games that I skeeted this on Bluesky the other day.
I need to get more active on Bluesky. Liam, yeah. I think you should. I need to find my niche on Bluesky because it needs to be
I kind of haven't been it's kind of hard because there aren't post notifications. So that's kind of how I'm so big into Twitter is I get it showing up on my home screen. But what I said is there is going to be a game in Atlantic 10 play this year where GW like dinks and dunks their way back into a game that they don't deserve to be in, simply by like running at the basket and drawing fouls. And then Darren Buchanan is going to take 15 free throws, and Rafael Castro is going to draw all these fouls and stuff. And it's going to infuriate the opposing fan base. Like, absolutely.
I could see a game where like VCU, the team that maybe gets the most foul calls I've ever seen, against VCU or something, where Buchanan just goes at it and their fans just go berserk. He's just flinging himself at the rim. He can't do that, whatever. But he's just so much stronger than any of their. They do have a good big. I don't know how to. I forget how to pronounce his name, but their backup center. He's a good defender. He's leading the league in blocks with like 12 minutes a game.
Damn, that's impressive. It's gonna and that is going to be the only GW game all these people watching the entire year, and that's going to be their impression of Darren Buchanan or Rafael Castro. Until they, forever. So, but that's just how it goes. Anything to say about the women's team?
I think conference play is going to be rough.
Yeah. What do you think their conference win total over under number is? 4.5, 3.5?
Yeah, 4.5 seems about right.
It depends how many times they play St. Bonaventure, because St. Bonaventure is also terrible.
That's another disaster program, but 4.5 seems about right.
They're playing. The women's team is at LaSalle on Sunday, and I'm considering them. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Get a press pass. Yeah.
Get a press pass. This is the only press. This isn't even press anymore. We just sit here and.
This counts.
I bet I could get it.
Yeah, this totally counts. No, say you are with the Department of Hoops.
Okay. Maybe I will. I just don't know. I might want to stay home and watch the Eagles. Although now Jalen Hurts isn't starting, so maybe not. What was I going to say? Yeah. No, this team is not going to be good. They play St. Bonaventure only once, and they get to go to St. Bonaventure. Yeah. I don't know. I'll set their win total at 4.5.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there.
1-1 in their tournament last weekend. I didn't watch any of it. I was in Ireland actually for a wedding, so nice excuse. So,
what is the Irish congratulatory remark that you would say there?
Well, cheers would be sláinte.
Sláinte. Okay, sláinte.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I know we said
let's wrap this up. I think.
Yeah, I know we said we wanted to wrap this up pretty. We didn't want it to go too long.
Again, we've realized, I think 40 minutes is about the max attention span people have for GW basketball thoughts.
Yeah.
So, quickly, with 30 seconds, GW basketball hot take for conference play.
Oh, God, you didn't say we were doing this. I would have come up with one. I think they beat a top 4 team, and I think they lose more than one game to a bottom 4 team.
Yeah, I like it. My hot take is that Darren Buchanan Jr. will assert himself as an all-conference first-teamer and push for player of the year consideration. I don't know if the team record will be there for that, but, I think during conference play, he'll really shine.
Yeah, I hope so.
Actually, no, I'm going to put a number to it. During conference play, he's going to average 20 and 10.
How many free throws a game?
Attempts or
75. No,
attempts or makes? That's the big question.
Yeah, attempts.
Attempts. 10.
That's good. Okay, well, I guess that just about settles it. I'm sure we'll be back probably early on in conference play, probably sometime around those Dayton or Rhode Island games.
I would anticipate a show either directly before or after Dayton.
Okay. Are you going to be at that game?
I'll be at Dayton. I will not be making the trip down to Richmond, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that Dayton is the first home game. There's going to be no students.
A lot of people in the GW program are very upset about this.
It's going to be all Dayton fans. It's all Dayton fans in the first place, but that's stupid.
Yes, It is a frustrating quirk of the schedule.
But this always happens. They always put Dayton early in the year.
Yeah.
So whatever. All right, we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in.